Oh, hello. I seem to have lost track of time. Nice of you to join me. Cheerio, pip pip, and all that rubbish. No, this isn't an episode of Masterpiece Theater. It's a video on pocket watches. But as Dr. Sheldon Cooper said, what's life without a little whimsy? Now, you probably know me specifically as a collector of wristwatches, but on this episode of Adventures with Time, we consider pocket watches. I'll show you the pocket watches for which I am the current custodian, one of which is believed to be over 170 years old. We'll also discuss, in my view, the differences, perhaps pros and cons, of collecting pocket watches versus wristwatches. So enjoy. Ew. Hello again. I'm a collector of watches, specifically wristwatches. But over the years, my wife and I have come to possess a few pocket watches, including the one you saw in the introduction. Now, I never really paid these pocket watches much attention. Although they are very interesting and beautiful to admire, wearing them isn't practical, at least not for me. And that is why, although I call myself a watch collector, I only acquire wristwatches. I would imagine pocket watches are an entirely different area of horology, and collectors of pocket watches think differently about their collecting activities. And let me say clearly that I'm not advocating that one area is better than the other, just different. In fact, as a wristwatch collector, I have little knowledge about what drives collectors of pocket watches, or how they go about their hobby. I can only conjecture that the vast majority of pocket watch collectors do not actually wear pocket watches, at least not on a regular basis. Therefore, admiring one's collection is done at home, whereas I mostly admire my wristwatches while wearing them throughout the day. And style and fit of a wristwatch to one's wrist and clothing and daily activities is a major consideration on selecting which wristwatch is to be worn. I'm not sure that is the case for pocket watches. However, I fully admit again that not being a pocket watch collector leaves me a bit blind into the ins and outs of the hobby. Having said that, I must say that for the making of this video, I've had to dig a bit deeper into pocket watches to learn more about the specific watches I have. This has been very educational and enjoyable to connect with collectors on the internet who graciously responded to my beginner questions and provided me references where I could learn more about the watches I have. Ah, what a nice hobby of which to be a part, don't you think? And now, onto the pocket watches. We'll start out with this watch that you saw in the introduction. It was given to me by my wife in one of our earlier anniversaries, wedding anniversaries. It's a Baylor watch. Bring it in here a bit closer so you can see. Fully stainless steel, I believe, with sort of a horizontal brush dial on it. And if you can read down there in the fine print, it is Swiss made. Nice little close and snap open to the case. That's about it. All right, enough of that modern stuff. Let's get into some real old watches. This is a Hamilton pocket watch, a men's pocket watch sized at 51 millimeters in diameter with a thickness of 14 millimeters and an overall weight of 102 grams. Now, it's what they call an open face watch or a railroader's watch. And that's because you don't want to have to fiddle around with any dial cover to get access to see the time. You want to pull it out and be able to read the time right away. It's got what I believe as a ceramic dial or porcelain dial. Let me see if I can get some nice reflections on there so you can, oh, there's some. So you can see what that looks like. Of course, 2 hands for the hour and minutes and a subdial for seconds. And you can see that this watch is running. Nice crown here for winding, and then pull it out one click and you can set your time. Nice big dial, clean, easy to read. with Arabic hour numerals and a seconds track with 5-minute intervals and a sub-second track with 10-second intervals there. Fairly clean back. This one hasn't been engraved. That's what that space there is for. Let's open the back and see what we got. It's got a double back case. The first back, I would assume you would put some engraving on there, but this shows us that this is a Keystone case and a serial number there for the case. Open up the movement cover, and first we can see the same serial number here, and J Boss is stamped there. That means that this is a plated case, because J Boss, as I'm told, is a manufacturer that patented a special gold plating process. Before we look at the movement, let's note that on the rim here for this movement case cover are the last 5 digits of the case serial number. Why the last 5? I really don't know. And then we look at the movement itself, a very nicely decorated movement. You can see it is working. And over here, it is written AWW Company, Waltham. And AWW stands for the American Waltham Watch Company. Now over here on the side, you'll see another serial number. That's the serial number of the movement itself. And I looked this up on a database, and I'll leave a link to that database down below in the description. And that gives us a lot of information about this movement. It is a Waltham grade 610, 7 jewels, and was made approximately 1900. So that tells us that this watch is just about 120 years old, and it still runs. Very nice, beautiful movement decoration. To me, this represents the classic style gentleman's pocket watch. Very handsome, very readable dial, big numbers, and that sub-second sub-dial. I'm very happy to have this as a fine example of a gentleman's pocket watch in my collection. Next up, we have another Waltham watch, although given the 42.5 millimeter diameter, I assume this to be a woman's watch. I'm not sure, but that's my take. It's got a thickness of 12 millimeters and an overall weight of 58 grams. Now, this is a watch in the hunter style, in that the dial has a cover to it so that it won't get damaged during hunting. You can see that this watch is missing the crystal, and I believe that, like the previous watch, it is a porcelain dial. Let's see if we can get some of that reflection showing there so you can see the sheen on the dial. Like the other one, it's got Arabic numbers for the hour indices and for the minute track every 5-minute intervals. And again, like the other one, it has a sub-dial for seconds. Very nice looking, very appealing. Now, nothing on the dial cover inside except for the serial number of the case. You'll note that the design is pretty much similar on the front and the back, although the front has this initial M, I believe that is. I've always had a hard time figuring out these fancy script letters. You'll note that the little loop to put the chain on is missing. And in case you didn't catch it before, the way you open the front to see the dial is by clicking on the crown, and that activates that lever there to open up the front. The back case opens up to reveal, I guess, an area, protective area for the movement. And you can see here that this is a Keystone case, again, with the same serial number. Open up the movement cover, first taking a look at the inside, and we can see that it is also a J Boss, which means it's plated case with that same serial number. Turning over to the movement, another beautifully decorated American Waltham Watch Company movement. And again, the last 5 digits of the case serial number. And there is the serial number of this 15 jewel movement. And based on that serial number and other information I've gathered on the internet, this movement is what's called a Seaside movement, 15 joules, model 1890, which means it was produced somewhere between 1896 and 1912. So another 100-year plus watch. And those bridges on that movement are just a delight to look at, with all of that script writing and fancy engraving. Even the edge of this watch and down by the hinge has some very nice detail work on it. Again, a very nice watch, and one that I'm very glad to have in my holdings. This next watch is the smallest of the group and the most mystery with it. Let me bring the camera down closer. As I said, this is the smallest of the watches in the holdings. It's just 32 millimeters wide and 10 millimeters thick and weighs in at just 27 grams. And it is in the style of what's called a half hunter, in that there is a cover for the dial, but it has a window in it so you can see the time. Now, the dial is the most interesting thing to me. Again, it looks porcelain. You can see that shiny reflection, but it looks like it might be hand inked on there. I don't know, maybe you guys know and can let me know in the comments below. But certainly a rough sort of writing on the dial. Roman numerals for the hour indices, but Arabic numbers for the minute track every 5-minute interval. So very interesting. And of course, one would not have to take the watch and open the case to see the time. And that's why it's called a half hunter. There's no maker's marking on this case anywhere, or actually on the movement, as you'll see later. There is a design on the back, which I've been going back and forth with my wife on whether it's a design or whether it's a set of initials. I almost see here an S design and maybe an E, but that could just be in my imagination. And we'll get to this little piece up here later. Opening up the case back, we can see that this is a solid 14 karat gold case with a cover that has not been adorned with any inscription for the movement. And if we open up the movement, again, 14 karat gold, but no maker's information or serial number or really any design on the movement. So it's really a mystery to me who made this movement and this case. Now, again, conversing with some folks on Watch You Seek, I've been told that it is a movement of low to middle grade, a cylinder escapement type, despite the high class case of 14 karat gold, and that it has a bridge style that is common among both generic movement makers as well as some other manufacturers like Phoenix, Phenix, or the upper class Lacoutre. It's still a mystery as to who made this watch, but if we took it apart and look at some of the movements underneath the bridge, we might be able to figure out who made this watch, but I'm certainly not going to do that. Now, the other thing to note is this strange opening here on the top. It looks like something is missing. And again, I've been told that there was a button here that would depress that cylinder inside so that when you wound the crown, instead of winding the watch, it would actually change the time. So that's sort of a manual mechanism to move some gears or position some things to actually change the time rather than winding the watch. All in all, it's a very nice little watch to go along with this grouping. Now we come to what I would consider the signature piece of the grouping, and that's this very old pocket watch that came to us in this miniature tall clock or upright case to make it look like a grandfather clock, although you can tell it's only about a foot or 14 inches high. The watch gets put in through this swinging door, and we've got the key that I'll talk about later taped to the back. Now the way you take this watch out gently is to swing this door open and just pop the watch out. This watch almost seems to glow in the light, and that's because it has this metal dial. Now, I'm not sure if it is a dial that is gold, like what I assume the rest of the case is. It's a hunter style with a window in the dial cover, a very beautiful and intricate dial. I believe those Roman numeral hour indices are applied by hand, and you can see the sub-second minute track has a dot at each of the minute intervals as well as the 15-minute intervals. And if you look closely, there are dots on the very outer track for each of the minute intervals. Now you'll note that this watch has no crown. So how does it get wound? Well, let's take a look inside. And there you see that it's got two gears or two stems that we would use that key for to both set the time and wind the spring inside. Let's look at the inside case cover. Again, not much there other than some hallmarks, 14 karat gold, and the serial number of the case. And I think one of the most interesting things is to look at this movement cover. On top here we have what I assume is the serial number of the movement and a description that it's a detached lever, fully jeweled. And this word down here, Lockel, is what I thought originally was the maker's name, but it turns out to be the region in Switzerland where this watch was made. You can see here that it is engraved hands. That's so you know that this gear is to set the hands, and this gear here is to wind the watch. And the watch does run. I haven't timed it to see how accurate it is. And then we get down to here, which took me a while to figure out, and thanks again to some folks on the internet. I know that it says Jules and FR, which stands for Frederick, and Jacot, Jacot, and I guess Piaget. And Jules Jacot was a maker of watches, and based on the movement, which I'll show you now, well, first let's take a look at the inside of the movement cover, and you can see there just a serial number also. But this movement is what I've come to learn is called a Lapin movement. And I was pointed to this little article about the different Lapin movements. You can tell that this is a Lapin 4 movement, which was made between 1835 and 1850. This watch is over 170 years old, and that's amazing, and it still runs. Again, I don't know how well it keeps time, but the fact that it's running without having been serviced for many, many years is amazing. And just look at what we would consider nowadays to be a very simple movement, very few gears. And that's partially due to the fact that you directly wind the watch from the barrel. There are no gears that have to attach to a crown that would also not only wind the watch, but set the time on the watch. So a very simple looking watch. I'm sure that in its day, this watch was somewhat complicated. Again, a prize to have in this grouping of watches, and it certainly deserves to be in this miniature tall case or grandfather clock case as the center of this small collection of pocket watches that I have. And if your interests lie more in wristwatches, I suggest you look at this video, which is on my Tudor Black Bay 58, or this video on my Chinese Seagull 1963. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you in my next video.